a DOJ report with the city of Louisville. Tonight, fast forward, I stand here proudly to say that I am happy to be a community member of Louisville. I'm proud. I've traveled a lot of places, and they're not doing the same work that we're doing. And I pride myself in that. This city has a lot of potential to be great. And the one thing I think we all can agree on is that we want to all be treated fair and with professionalism. And we all need a clear understanding what safety actually looks like for Louisville. You see, police brutality is only a part. I also am a health. My job requires me to have a relationship with EMTs, police officers, doctors, nurses, so on and so forth. And there's also a gap of service in healthcare when it comes to policing, believe it or not. With all that's going on today, and all the changes that we're going through, I think it's now's the time for us going into 2026 to build a policy that works for Louisville. So what I have done, thank God, it's just so happened, everything's going into place, right? Our newly reappointed Ed Harris got reappointed. So congratulations to him for that. And he will be joining us tonight, and you will hear firsthand what he's dealing with and what his expectations from us and what he plans on doing for our city. You'll also have a chance to ask him questions at the end. But more importantly, we need to learn how to strategize. Strategy is just not opinion, honey. It takes a lot of work, research, and it takes a commitment. Our specialist tonight, Carlton, I've been following him for about 4 years now, the work that he's been doing, and he's very consistent. He has a way of breaking things down to where everybody understands, and it's not just one-sided. Whereas me, people may be reluctant to follow me or support me in some of the decisions I've made. But at the end of the day, that does not mean that I don't want safety for not just myself, my children, but for everybody here. And we all deserve that. So who else better tonight that I can think of a better person to come and you'll hear from him later on about the work that he's doing, and you'll see why I highly recommend him. But tonight, I'm going to pass it over to Attica. She's going to moderate for us tonight. If you don't know, our lovely former state rep, Attica Scott, #Attica. Give her a round of applause, ladies. So I'm going to have her open it up, and you'll hear from her while we're here tonight, and while we're not going backwards. And I will be walking the room, so I'm going to hand out some index cards and pens and stuff. And I'll be collecting those if you have questions, and Attica will moderate the Q&A at the end of the night. Once again, if there's refreshments in the back, the bathrooms are straight to the back. If we can all put our phones on silent, and then we'll get this night started. And once again, thanks for being here, and you all give it up for Attica Scott.
Never in my career as a lawyer Please step to the side.
We have to be quiet.
All right, so glad that y'all are here this evening. I actually want to start because there's like a couple of rows of people who were part of the campaign to keep Ed harnessed, and I just want to acknowledge y'all because that was some good and important work. And not all of us could be involved because of the nature of our work that we do full time that pays the bills, but y'all could be, so thank you so much for that advocacy. So glad to see it work. So I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Carlton on my Ask Attica podcast this morning, but I do want to give a brief introduction of Carlton, and then he's going to, of course, talk about himself and the work that he does. I want you and Ed both to know that we're going to hold the questions until the end of both of your presentations, so we'll go through both of those, and then we'll open it up to questions that people may have. I also have some questions that I'll be, making some notes of as you're doing your presentations, that if folks have a pause and don't have any questions yet, I'll go ahead and ask them as well. But I'm going to introduce you, Carlton, to get us started. Thank you so much, Bianca, as always. Did you talk about Family United?
I didn't. Hold on, we'll go back.
Okay.
I said something about it, but not really.
Okay.
So the nonprofit that I founded, of course, we travel across the country standing in solidarity with impacted families. There is not really a real support system for people impacted from police violence, so we kind of created a coalition like this, where we show up in court, we pass legislation, so on and so forth. Big names, you name it. In grief, in mental health awareness is a lot of the work we do, but mainly it's education. Educating not just what happened to our families, but the process. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't understand the process. They only see what's presented on the news. So it's important for people and families to share their story and be authentic about it. And that's from the beginning to the end. A lot of families you don't hear about because it's hard. It's hard to get up in front of people and grieve and try to, be there for the community. So Families United is like that support system, but we also do a lot of community work because the community is a big part of our support system, and it's a big part of our therapy. So that's what Families United is about. You can follow me on Facebook, Families United, and I also have a website, thefamilies-united.org. So look me up, follow me, and we'll appreciate you, and we'll continue to do the work. Thank you, Anthony.
So Bianca talked about people not wanting to follow her lead sometimes. I always follow Bianca's lead. So, and I believe that we are both here because we believe in accountability, we believe in transparency, and we believe that our community deserves safety that's rooted in justice, not fear.
Amen.
Rooted in justice, not fear. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. So tonight is about power. It's the power of families united, the power of community, and the power of truth telling. That's one of the reasons we're at Reach 101. Right? There's no other space that gives you the truth like this in Louisville. So let's get started. I am thrilled to introduce someone who has been helping communities across the country reimagine public safety. He is a strategist, a builder, and a national expert in transforming systems that have been slow to change. He's the founder, owner, CEO, leader of a firm that's dedicated to community-driven public safety solutions. So please welcome Carlton Mayers, Esquire, to Louisville, y'all. It's his first time here. So Carlton, I know you have a presentation, but if you could share a little bit more about yourself and your background, that'd be amazing.
Okay.
That mic may be out of commission.
Oh, it doesn't work? All right. Thank you so much.
Sharon is Karen.
Okay. Hello, everybody. How you doing? I can stand up for this part, and then I'll have to sit down for the rest to do the slides with you. But yeah, good evening, everybody. How you doing tonight? Or this evening? Very good. Thank you for having me here. I just want to let you know it was my first time in Kentucky, and my first time in Louisville, Kentucky, and it is a beautiful city. And I really love this museum. I actually have been to the African American History Museum in DC when it first opened up. I went there 3 times because there's so much information. You just can't be there once. You got to go multiple times to take it in. And walking in this space is very reminiscent of being at that museum in DC. So it's a true treasure that you have this here in your city, all right? So I just want to say, beautiful city, a lot of culture, a lot of amazing people, and thank you so much for having me here. So just to do an introduction of who I am before I go into what we're going to talk about today. My name is Carlton T. Mance II, Esquire. I'm a national community development and safety expert, and I've been doing this work for over 15 years across the country. It started with me directing NAACP Criminal Justice, NAACP National Office's Criminal Justice Reform Program. This was back when Ben Jealous was the president. After him, President Cornell William Brooks, while I was in that role, I co-authored NAACP National's Born Suspect, Ending Racial Profiling Report, was published in 2014, provides all kinds of information on how to end racial profiling by state and local police. After that, I transitioned over to NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund Incorporated, also known as Thurgood Marshall's law firm. I was there as the policy counsel for the policing reform campaign. What that meant was that I worked on both the Ferguson, Missouri and Baltimore, Maryland consent decrees for at least 3 years, from negotiation up through implementation, meaning from the time they negotiated the consent decree all the way through them appointing an independent monitoring team, and then ultimately now enforcing the consent decree for compliance. We did in NAACP Legal Defense Fund while I was there, our own pattern of practice investigation of the North Charleston, South Carolina Police Department. This was after Walter Scott's death, which had to do with the African-American gentleman shot in the back, unarmed while running away. Officer tried to move his taser toward him and say that he rapped the officer's taser, and that's why he used lethal force on him. Officer didn't know a civilian was recording the whole incident from their window at their home on their camera phone. And so then they provided that to the family, and then now that officer's been incarcerated. So we did our own kind of practice on the police department because we knew this is not a bad seat situation, right? It's not just a couple of bad seat officers that once we weed them out, the police department's good to go. We realized that it was more of a systemic problem that had to do with more than the officers, but the culture, the practices, policies, everything of that police department. And so that's why we did our own kind of practice investigation with the community, which has now resulted in them having their own community advisory committee. And that then resulted in them hiring their first African-American police chief, which happened some years ago. I know now they have a new police chief, but they had their first one as a result of the work we had done at Legal Defense Fund, helping the community out. I also, while I was at Legal Defense Fund, worked on the Eric Gardner case in New York City, and I worked on, I lobbied on the Hill for federal policing reform legislation, a lot of which involved, has now been incorporated into the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And then lastly, I did a whole lot of work with President Barack Obama's administration for at least 5 years while I was at NAACP National and at Legal Defense Fund, working on several different policing reform initiatives, some coming out of the White House, others coming out of the U.S. Department of Justice, most notably the 21st Century Policing Task Force Report recommendations. And so now, with all that experience and knowledge, I have started up my own consulting company called Mayor Strategic Solutions, LLC, and I'm going to talk to you about the work I do on empowering communities to be able to do this work on your own. And so that way you can use the laws, use the know-how, use the history, use what's already in your backyard, what's already in your toolkit to be able to move forward rather than relying on, let's say, the Department of Justice to come and save the day, which we know is not going to happen anymore, okay, at least in the next few years. So, in the meantime, what is it that you can do based on your state law, right? Grassroots advocacy, administrative advocacy, etc., so that you can continue to move the ball forward, right, on policing reform and police accountability here in Louisville. That's what we're going to talk about today. So I hope that was sufficient in giving.
It was great. We're going to work on your pronunciation of Louisville, but that was great.
Thank you. You're right.
Now,
Louisville. You say it right.
let it slide.
Thank you.
So you're gonna go ahead with your.
Oh, I can, okay, all right then, let me sit down real quick and then I'm gonna get the slides up and going here. Thank you. Okay. So, on that note, good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you today about license revoked, grading state laws on police decertification based on the CAP method. Now, we're gonna talk a bit about what this stuff is in a minute, but I just wanna kind of run through the slides. I do want to let you know that that cover that you see there of the report card, this presentation is based on a report card that I have produced and published about a month or so ago, where I did an assessment of every single state that has a law that allows for decertification and looked at, does the state law allow for civilians like yourselves, taxpayers, to be able to be engaged in that process of decertifying, revoking the license of a police officer in the state of Kentucky. Now, I know I'm saying a lot of things that maybe some of you are like, I don't really know what decertification is, and I just want to give you some background on that real quick before we delve into what decertification is and what does that look like in Kentucky. So that's what that cover is, but you'll know more in a minute. So on that note, I know that you can't see everything here. We tried to convert the slides from a PC onto a MacBook. So some of the slides might come out looking a little funny. I apologize for that. Just know this is my bio, which I've already gone through with you, so I don't think I need to do too much on that. What I will say is this. I mentioned that I work with communities around the country to advance the CAP method, and that's gonna be here on this slide. So the CAP method, what that is, as you can see here on this slide, it consists of 3 components. Each component must be achieved in order for the CAP method to be successful. So the first component being community empowerment. What that involves are community members like yourselves, and especially those who live in neighborhoods and zip codes, blocks, areas in Louisville. I hope I'm saying it properly. I don't know if I am, but forgive me if I'm not. Who are living in areas where you have, for instance, high levels of community violence, like domestic violence, gun violence. You also have issues related to environmental issues. You have issues related to education, issues related to in-crisis mental health, substance abuse, issues related to healthcare, etc. While all of that is happening in those particular neighborhoods, zip codes, and areas, you also have a history of negative police interactions, being racial profiling, excessive use of force, etc. So these are zip codes, areas, and neighborhoods in Louisville where you have all of these things happening at the same time. So the individuals who live in those communities don't just have to worry about how do we stay safe from people committing crime, but they also have to worry about how do we stay safe from law enforcement acting like criminals. And that's what you want to do, is you want to focus on how we can empower those specific individuals in your community, because when they're empowered, that empowers and uplifts everybody in the community, all right? And so we want to make sure that you hone in on them and say, how do we make sure, for instance, that you're involved in, you have knowledge of, and you have some level of decision-making authority over all direct police-civilian interactions like stops, arrests, uses of force, surveillance technology, the way protests are handled, in addition to solving community development and safety challenges like gun violence. How can law enforcement and other aspects of the community work together on doing that as one community? And so the community empowerment component is all about how do we especially make sure to bring in the people who are most directly connected to those challenges. Now, why is that important? Because the people closest to the problems are also the people closest to the solutions. So if we want to have long-term, sustainable solutions in Louisville, then that means we need to make sure that those particular community members especially are involved and have knowledge of and have some level of decision-making authority, and that they're at the helm of decision-making with law enforcement, working with the other community safety stakeholders in the community together as one community. Now, the next component is accountability, and this involves creating an inhospitable environment for those who engage in misconduct by establishing both internal and external accountability mechanisms that work together. And then the last one here is transparency, which I define as the interconnectedness and coordination amongst what I call the 4 aspects of the community, which every community has, and you're going to see here on the next slide. So, first we have law enforcement. This includes sheriff's office, state and local police, etc. Then we have elected and appointed government officials. This also includes government employees. Next, we have community members. This includes directly impacted individuals like I just talked about earlier. It also includes direct service providers, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, private businesses. And then last but not least, we have the local press and news media. So according to my definition of transparency, all four of these aspects of the community need to work together through interconnectedness and coordination as one community to support community development and safety and ensure public accountability through more so proactive rather than reactive strategies. So I know all that sounds good, but let's actually talk more about what we're here to talk about today. So, number one, I want to have a show of hands. Now, you see I say here, National Police Decertification Report Card. What is decertification? How many of you, show of hands, know what decertification is for police? Okay, so that looks like it's not the majority of the audience, which is, speaks to what I want to talk about today, which is a lack of information, or at least a lack of knowledge about the power you have and about the laws that exist here in Kentucky and how you can utilize those laws for what you want to accomplish. And so, and that's just not here, that's around the whole country. Because at this point, we have 49 states out of 50 that have laws on the books that allow for the decertification of law enforcement. And most taxpayers, most community members have no idea about it. Anytime law enforcement engage in misconduct, the first thing they think is fire them, file criminal charges, and sue them for money, right? And that's it. We think those are the only options we have. They don't realize that there's another option. You can take away that license, okay? So let's talk about what that is, and we're gonna dig into that. So as you can see here, it says certification versus decertification. So a certification or license provides a law enforcement officer with his or her authority, including the authority to carry and use a firearm and make arrests as a law enforcement officer. Revoking this license, also called decertification, takes away this authority from law enforcement officers. Most importantly, decertification ensures police accountability by preventing a law enforcement officer who is engaged in misconduct from transferring from one law enforcement agency to another and then becoming what a term now has become very popular in America, a wandering officer, right? Wandering from one law enforcement agency to another, engaging in misconduct. Once somebody finds out you're doing misconduct, starts sniffing around, okay, time to resign. Boom, off to the next police department, gonna do it over there now. Okay, time to resign, off, so they just keep wandering around, never being held accountable, okay? And that's the reason why they're able to do that, is because they have a license, they have certification under the state that allows them to do that. So the decertification process is the best way to ensure that a law enforcement officer who is engaged in misconduct cannot become a wandering officer. In other words, an officer transferring from one law enforcement agency to another without any accountability by revoking his or her license, decertifying them. Wandering officers are a real problem. And we've seen this in a lot of high-profile officer-involved shootings and death cases. One instance, Eric Gardner's case in New York City. Remember, I Can't Breathe? So the officer who killed him, prior to ending up at the New York City precinct in Long Island, he had been transferred and reassigned to 3 different police precincts because he had engaged in misconduct at the one previous. And so instead of terminating his employment and firing him, they just reassigned him and transferred him to another precinct where then he engaged in misconduct there. Okay, reassigned him again to another precinct. And ultimately, he ended up in Long Island, and he ended up engaging with Eric Gardner over Eric Gardner selling loose cigarettes, and then he choked him out on camera. And we all saw that, so we know what happened there. He was a wandering officer. Okay, that was not his first rodeo with Eric Gardner. Another high-profile case where this has become an issue is Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. So the officer who killed Mike Brown, prior to working at the Ferguson Police Department, he had come from another police department where he was under investigation for misconduct. So what did he do? Oh, I'm under investigation, boom, time to resign. He left, got a job in Ferguson, Missouri at that police department, and we know what happened there. Mike Brown's not here anymore, okay? So the wandering officer is a big problem, and I know, in fact, here in Louisville, you've also had that situation where the law enforcement officer who killed Breonna Taylor also faced prosecution for alleged misconduct at another law enforcement agency. I believe that was Miles Cosgrove. who had transferred from, not transferred, I think he was fired, I believe, from Louisville Metropolitan Police Department, and ended up getting a job after that at the
Carlton
County?
County.
Sheriff's-
Carlton County
Oh,
Sheriff's.
Carlton? Okay, all right, Carlton County Sheriff's Office. And I think there was another incident that happened there recently of potential misconduct that now has come up. So you're seeing even here in your town, in your city, how this issue is coming up, okay? Now the reason why law enforcement are permitted to do this is because they retain their license. Now, I'm an attorney. I have a license to practice law. A doctor has a license to practice medicine. Law enforcement also have a license to be a police officer in their state. The license does not only allow them to transfer from one law enforcement agency to another, the license also allows them to arrest people, to use force on people, and get all of those protections under police union contract, under US Supreme Court law. Once you take away that license and certification, let's say that they want to arrest you, but they don't have a license to be a police officer in Kentucky. Well, they can arrest you. They can do it like any of us can, a citizen's arrest. Let's say they want to use force and say, oh, well, I was justified in using that force. Well, they can do that the same way you and I can. They can claim self-defense, but they're not going to get those additional privileges and protections that police union contract and US Supreme Court law and all those other laws provide them because they don't have that certification and license. And this is why, at the end of the day, decertification, revoking that license, is the best way to hold law enforcement accountable because the buck stops here. You're not going to victimize or harass anybody else or any other family members because guess what? You're not able to be a police officer. So if you do it, you're doing that as a civilian and you're going to get treated the same way a civilian would, okay? So there's a lot of power that law enforcement have in that license. When you take it away, they lose that. And so that's why the decertification piece is such a big, important aspect of police accountability. Next one. Okay, so now that we talked about what decertification is, let's now talk about who is responsible for decertifying law enforcement, all right, in every state. So as you can see here, it says Peace Officer Standards and Trainings Commission, also known as POST, P-O-S-T Commission. The Peace Officer Standards and Trainings Commission, POST Commission, typically is responsible for certifying licensing and decertifying revoking license of all state and local law enforcement. Kentucky, so I'm asking this, does anybody know who's Kentucky's Post Commission? Raise your hands, can you? I know you do. You get one per two people. Okay, so we have two people.
I know, I just found out today.
Okay, you found out today, so but before you found out today, how many people knew? So we got maybe two people, right? Maybe two. I just want to let you know, this is a state entity that is being paid for with your taxpayer dollars. So I just want to make sure to emphasize that with you, because we do live in a democracy, which I'm very proud of, and that means that if my taxpaying dollars are paying for you, then I have some level of management over you and how you're going to engage with me, how you're going to serve me. So just know, this is a state entity responsible for something very important in your state, and they are being paid for with your taxpaying dollars, all right? So the name of the Post Commission in Kentucky is called the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council, also called CLEC, K-L-E-C, and CLEC is independent and is under the Kentucky Justice and Public Safety Cabinet and the Department of Criminal Justice Training, all right? So that's the structure within your state government of where CLEC lies, but they are independent. They're not dependent on another state entity to tell them what to do. They get to determine what they do. And they are responsible for both licensing, also known as certification or certifying, and revoking license, also known as decertification, of law enforcement in the state of Kentucky. All right, all law enforcement in the state of Kentucky. And this is state and local police. So, next one. Okay, so with that said, let's get to the meat of what we're here to talk about today. So number one, you see that QR code up there? So the QR code, you can scan it, and it will take you to the webpage on my website where you can download the National Police Decertification Report Card for free. Okay, I don't charge anything on my website. All you need to do is register, meaning you just provide your email address, and then you have access to all the resources on it, including the report card. So you can do that right now if you want. Beyond that, I already created a little like snapshot sample here that we can run through what is reflected in the report card as it relates to Kentucky and decertification. So number one, I just want to let you know that when I created this report card, what I did is, now that you understand what decertification is, I didn't focus on what's the decertification rate of each state. I focused on the legislative language, the language in your law. Does it actually provide for civilians and civilian oversight authorities to be able to be meaningfully engaged in the decertification process for law enforcement misconduct, all right? Now, what does that mean? Well, what I did is I broke all this down into 9 categories, 9 questions that we're gonna run through, and I'm gonna show you how Kentucky, and this is good news, I want you all to give yourself a round of applause here. Kentucky is one of the top 20, or is on the top 20 list of one of the most empowering state laws in the country when it comes to decertification. And we're gonna talk about why, because I know a lot of people in here didn't even know about decertification or about collect. And so I know this is kind of new for you, but we're gonna talk about why you have one of the best in the country, and also talk about some of the work you still have to do, right, going forward. So, like I said, I didn't focus on decertification rates. I don't know how often CLEC is decertifying law enforcement. That was not a part of the report card. All I looked at was just what kind of processes and mechanisms allow for civilian oversight and civilians, taxpayers, to be involved in that decertification process. So, so what I want to focus on is, I want to let you know, you should have a page. There's like 2 pages that were on each chair. One of those pages is the same slide as this one. So I know the letters or words might be kind of small print, so that way it's easier for you to follow along and read. And the QR code is there as well if you want to scan that and look at the report card. So I just want to make sure you know what you have in front of you. So, like I said, I focused on community empowerment. How do we make sure that we live in a democracy, we're taxpayers, and that means that as a taxpayer, I have a say over how you conduct government business and how it relates to me. Let's see what that looks like in Kentucky under your state law, meaning no DOJ, no federal government involved. You ain't got to worry about that. This is all you and your state government and then your local government. So let's talk about it. Okay, so number one, are meetings accessible to the public? So what does that mean? And when you download the report card packet, I break down what each one of these categories means, and so you get a full understanding of where I'm coming from. When I give a check, meaning that you did a good job at it, an X, meaning that you did not, or you do not accomplish what you're supposed to in this category, and then a question mark, meaning I looked in every which way that is publicly accessible to find the information, and I was not able to find it through a publicly accessible manner. Meaning, if I'm a resident of Kentucky, I'm a taxpayer in Kentucky, and I want to know what's going on with decertification in my state, I'm going to do this kind of research. Look online, go to the CLEC's website, look up the law, look up the administrative code. If I'm not able to find that information there, doing it that way, then you get a question mark, okay? Which means you don't get a check, and that means you don't get the benefit of a check. So I just want to break that down. That's what all this means here. So, are meetings accessible to the public? What that means is, number one, are meetings only provided, meaning CLEC's meetings, the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council, when they have their standing meetings, which are considered open meetings within Kentucky's Open Meetings Act, so the public is able to be involved in the meeting, able to provide public comment, etc., right? Democracy. Are those meetings only accessible in person, or are they only accessible virtually, or are they accessible both in person and virtually? Meaning, maybe I don't have a car, so I can't just drive over to your location and show up to your meeting, or maybe I don't have access to the internet, because where I live at, we just don't have that, so maybe I can't participate virtually. So to be able to show up in person and be able to show up virtually allows for everybody to be involved in the process as a taxpayer. And to me, that's more empowering than only having either one, to have both. And so that's why if you have it under your state law, you get a check. Guess what? Kentucky, you have it. Okay, so in Kentucky, sorry, I'm pulling that up real quick. Okay, so in Kentucky, CLEC, when they have their meetings, they occur in person at the Drury, that's D-R-U-R-Y, and Suites in Louisville, so here in your city. And they also provide a video call link, either Zoom or Teams, so that way, if you're able to show up in person at the Drury Inn in Louisville, or you're not able to show up in person, and that means now you can participate via Teams or Zoom, you can show up as a taxpayer and say, okay, I want to know what's going on with decertification of my taxpayer dollars in my state. Okay, go up, you show up, all right, I want to be able to provide public comment. Okay, well, you could do it in person or you could do it virtually. Either way, your law allows you to do that, and you got to check on that. That's a big, big accomplishment. Because I'll tell you right now, even where I live at in Illinois, they don't allow them to show up in person and virtual. It's only in person. And that is extremely inconvenient. Okay, Melissa, so once again, if you don't do it, I'm gonna do it. Okay? I mean, listen, you had some lawmakers on the state level that got it done, all right? So, I mean, you gotta give them credit. No matter what party they came from, they did the right thing. So you gotta give them credit for that. So that means that, and this is something for you to know that's empowering as you're looking at the direction you're going in related to your alternative to the consent decree, when you're looking at the federal funding cuts and the impact that's gonna have on the consent decree and on other like gun violence intervention, all the other work that ties into the consent decree, you also wanna make sure you know, okay, well, this is something that we can incorporate into our work as we're looking at mechanisms for police accountability. And what that would require you to do is to actually show up to these meetings, okay? So I just wanna make sure you understand, now that you know you can do this virtually and in person, that now provides you an opportunity to show up in person and or virtual and let them know we the taxpayers are watching, we're paying attention, and we're active, okay? So now that's our meetings accessible to the public. The next category is, do meetings occur often? Okay, now when I say that, what I mean is, when CLEC has their standing open meetings, okay, do those meetings happen once a month? Meaning that as a member of the public, a taxpayer, you have 12 bites at the apple to show up to a meeting, find out what's going on, and provide public comment. Or are they having meetings once every other month, which means that you have 6 bites at the apple, right? So that's half of the year. You get to show up, find out what's going on, provide public comment. And in my opinion, if it's fewer than 6 opportunities, meaning they meet maybe 5 times a year, 4 times a year or less, then you get an X. Because to me, in a democracy, as a taxpayer, you should be able to show up as much as often to find out what's going on with your taxpaying dollars and provide public comment. And that means at least half of the year, you should have that opportunity. That means you'd have at least 6 times of the year that you're able to do that. If it's fewer than that, you got some more work to do. Now, in Kentucky, under your state law, and according to the bylaws for CLEC, they only meet once every 3 months. So that means you have 4 bites at the apple. Only 4 opportunities a year. Hopefully you're available to show up, find out what's going on, and provide public comment. In my opinion, that's not enough, okay? And that's why you got an X on that. Because I think that there's more that can be done. We'll talk about how you could potentially get that to happen, even without a change to your state law. So the next one here is, and this one, in my opinion, is one of the most important pieces of this report card as it relates to Kentucky. Can civilians, okay, that's all of you, and that's also the Office of Inspector General and Civilian Complaint Review Board, can civilians file complaints directly with CLEC that can then initiate the decertification process? The answer is yes. So under your state law, you're able to do that. Now, why is that a big deal? That's a big deal because most states, there's only 49 states that allow for decertification of law enforcement under state law. The only one that doesn't is Rhode Island. I don't know why they don't. Everybody else does. Most states, they only allow for the police chief and the sheriff to file that report that would then initiate the decertification process. Your state is one of the ones in the minority that also allows civilians to file that complaint directly with CLEC or the CLEC counterpart. And so that means that you can actually initiate the decertification process. And that is very empowering, especially in a democracy, okay? Because a lot of times we know police chief, sheriffs, they might be biased, okay? They're like, yeah, maybe they didn't do the right thing, but I don't think they deserve to lose their license on it. So I'm not gonna initiate the decertification process, even though the people in my community want me to do that. That can be problematic. And I think it's wonderful that your law says, hey, let's just cut out the middleman and middlewoman, and let's just have it be directly the taxpayer with the state entity that's being paid for with taxpayer dollars, right? You can now file that complaint directly with them. So that's very empowering, and to me, that provides an opportunity for grassroots advocacy, for you to figure out how do we develop a local mechanism with the Inspector General's office, with Civilian Complaint Review Board, even amongst ourselves just as civilians, on how we can make sure that when there's a complaint about law enforcement misconduct in Louisville, that local complaint, if it's sustained, or maybe even if it's not, you can then at least initiate a decertification process that could potentially result in that officer losing their license on the state level. So a local action can have state level impacts. This is possible under your state law. Once again, no DOJ, so you ain't got to worry about that, okay? This is all you and your government and your taxpaying dollars paying for this, okay? The next thing we have, and I know I'm gonna move, I got like 10 minutes or less going for me. Okay, are civilians involved in the decision-making process? What that means is CLEC under state law required to have members of the public who do not have a law enforcement background, who are not elected officials, to be members, decision-making, voting members of CLEC, so they can vote and have power over decertifying law enforcement? The answer is yes. Under your state law, you have at least one person. And the good thing is the report card, everything I'm saying to you here, when you look at the report card, you look at each one of these boxes and categories, you're gonna see a number in the lower right-hand corner. That number is the EndNote citation. So what you do is you go on the back of the report card packet where the EndNote section is, and you look at that corresponding number to where it is in the back of the EndNotes, and you're gonna see the citations, the references for where you can find this information. In other words, for filing a complaint, I have the link on CLEC's website in the EndNotes section. So all you need to do is copy, paste it, boom. Now you see that page, the complaint form on your screen, and now you can use it. The same thing goes for, a civilian being on CLEC. I have that link as well in the EndNotes section so you can see who that public member is, because they have their name and their face and everything there, and what the requirements are to be a public member on CLEC. The next thing is, does CLEC, your post commission, have the power to investigate complaints independent of law enforcement agencies? This is another big point, because most post commissions don't do this, but yours does. The answer is yes. So CLEC actually has its own independent investigators, its own in-house investigators that do these investigations when decertification complaints are filed. Most most states, the post commission will rely on the police department where the officer is employed to do the investigation. When they finish their investigative report, they provide that to the post commission or to the CLEC counterpart, and then CLEC, or the post commission, they would then decide what they're gonna do based on only that police report, not their own independent investigation, in addition to the police report. So your state law does allow for CLEC to do it on their own and decide, okay, we're gonna see what the police did, we're gonna do our own investigation, compare and contrast, compare notes, and then we'll decide if we're gonna decertify, move forward with decertification at that point or not. So that's a big deal, because like I said, most states don't allow for that. They only rely on the law enforcement department to determine that. And then the next two here, I wanna just really quickly go through with you. So does your state law, or does CLEC, provide information on ongoing decertification investigations, like an open database or an integrity report? Meaning, when an officer is under investigation for decertification in the state of Kentucky, if you go on CLEC's website, is there a web page or a document that will list out, these are the ongoing investigations for decertification, or not? The answer is no. There is no information on that. The next box here is, does CLEC provide information on decertification determinations or adverse actions? Meaning, now we've done our investigation on decertification, and this is our determination. This is the result of it. We've decided to decertify the officer, or temporarily decertify them, or not decertify them at all. No. So what that means is, in order for you to get access to any of this information, you have to submit a public records request. And the problem with that potentially could be, number one, they don't give you the information when you submit the request. They do give the information, but they redact a lot of stuff. And so you're still kind of like, I don't have enough to really know what's going on. Or they can say, yes, we'll give you all the information you want, but it's gonna cost you. And they're gonna charge you the administrative cost for them to be able to pull all that information or redact, if it involves video content, all of that stuff. So it can end up being what they call cost prohibitive, meaning that it's so expensive, you can't even afford to purchase the information to get it. So doing a public records request, even though it's an option, it's not the best option. The best option would be, if your state law were to be amended, like a lot of other states that have a post commission, and actually allow for an open database, if not for the ongoing investigation, at least for the final determination. So you know what the result is as a taxpayer, and then from there, you're empowered, right? Because this is your money paid for this. And then the last two we have here are, now does your state law in Kentucky require a checking and reporting to the NDI? The NDI is the National Decertification Index. This is a national database that is provided through an international organization. It has a long acronym. I'm not going to go into that, but just know that it's a database that only law enforcement agencies and post commissions have access to. And it populates and lists all law enforcement all across the country, and also in other parts of the world, who have been decertified by their law enforcement agencies. And so there have been a number of state laws that have passed since the protest in 2020 that now require that when a law enforcement agency decertifies an officer or a post commission decertifies them, that they have to report it to the national, to be posted, to be listed on the National Decertification Index, and that before they hire an officer, they also have to check that index to see if the officer is listed on it. Because if they are listed on it, then they're not allowed to hire them, okay? So what this does is this makes sure that not only is an officer decertified, he cannot be a police officer in your state, that also means that they can't transfer to another state, like Indiana, right? Your next door neighbor. And then go there and be like, hey, I have police experience, hire me. And now in Indiana, you know, they can say, okay, well, our law says that we need to check. The NDI, we check it, oh, you're on here. Sorry, we can't hire you, okay? Now, you cannot be a police officer pretty much anywhere. You're gonna have to change careers and do something else with your life, which is what we want. We don't want you patrolling streets anymore, harassing people, brutalizing them, and victimizing them. So, you know, just understand that's the power of the National Decertification Index, preventing state transfer from one state to another of law enforcement engaged in misconduct. And then the last one here, does your state law provide for both automatic and discretionary decertification? So the way decertification works process-wise is that there's two different pathways typically that you can go. Some states only go one pathway or the other, but some states now do both. In Kentucky, you do both, as you can see here. So automatic decertification has to do with, let's say an officer was convicted of committing a felony and certain misdemeanors under your state law that are considered decertifiable conduct, right? Automatic means that once they're convicted, they automatically lose their license. That's it. The conviction's there, boom, it's gone. And so that's automatic decertification. That only applies really to felonies and to certain misdemeanors, the ones that are the most egregious. Now, discretionary decertification, that has to do with, number one, that's more of a more drawn out process in a hearing where the officer gets to present evidence, witnesses in their case, in their favor, saying this is why I should not be decertified. And then you'll have an administrative law judge, or you'll have a committee of the full commission, the post commission, who will then preside over that hearing. They'll see all the evidence here, and then they'll provide a recommendation to the full post commission, in this case, collect, and then saying we recommend that the officer be decertified, or we recommend that they don't. And then it's up to the full body commission to make the final decision on if the officer gets decertified or not. Now that's discretionary. Now discretionary typically only applies to cases, it can apply to conduct that's criminal in nature, but typically applies to conduct that's unethical in nature rather than criminal. So it could apply to misdemeanors, certain kind of felonies, but definitely unethical behavior. Let's say, for instance, deactivation of body-worn cameras, right? That's considered unethical, but it's not considered a crime. Making certain misrepresentations in a police report, that could be considered unethical, but it's not a crime. Not intervening when you see another officer engaging in misconduct, like using excessive force, when you have a duty to intervene and stop that, and you don't do it. That's not necessarily illegal, right? But it is definitely unethical. So the good news is that, number one, you do have both processes and pathways for decertification, which means that there's a lot of different ways that law enforcement who choose to engage in misconduct in Louisville will be able to be held accountable for decertification, right? Not just for criminal conduct, but also unethical conduct. So this is why your state is one of is on the top 20 list and is one of the most empowering states when it comes to decertification and allowing civilians to be a part of that process. Now, just real quick, when I wrap this up, I do want to say one last thing here. which is that there's two things coming out of these results that I want you to really highlight and walk away with. One is the report card results show an opportunity for creating a local mechanism so that a local complaint for alleged law enforcement misconduct can result in law enforcement officers losing his or her certification to be a police officer in the whole state of Kentucky. The other thing that's important about this is these report card results also show opportunities for change through state and local legislative action. For instance, engaging with your Kentucky State Assembly about not having having an open database where you can see what's going on with ongoing investigations of decertification, what's going on with the final results after those investigations of decertification. That's going to require a change to your state law in order to make that a reality, okay? The other thing is administrative advocacy. When I say that, what I mean is you still have to advocate with CLEC. Because I think I read that Cosgrove, who was involved in Breonna Taylor's death, that there was a complaint filed against him for decertification, and CLEC declined to decertify him. Okay, so what that means is CLEC might need some fire on its butt to kind of get it to do what it's supposed to do, and what that requires is community participation, meaning you need to show up to their meetings. Okay? If you don't show up to their meetings, they're going to do what they're going to do because they have no pressure to do otherwise. If you show up to their meetings, you're providing public comment, you're filing complaints. In other words, you're using the state law. That's all you're doing. You're not doing anything except what the state law allows you to do. Then now that's putting pressure on them to start to do their job because now they know people are paying attention, people are watching. And so just understand you're going to have to do some not only state legislative advocacy, but also administrative advocacy with CLEC to make sure it's doing what it's doing, as well as grassroots advocacy to work with the Office of Inspector General, Civilian Complaint Review Board, and amongst yourselves to create that local mechanism. So complaints on the local level have a statewide impact for decertification. So with that said, the last walkaway thing I want to give you here is I do, if you're interested in a teaching or a workshop, I do provide both. And what that means is, for instance, I provide a teaching where I run through an explanation of your state's decertification process, meaning we're going to talk about in detail what does automatic decertification look like in Kentucky, what does discretionary decertification look like specifically in Kentucky. We're also, I will produce a mini report card for you, custom tailored for Kentucky, where it's going to have what I showed you earlier, that's the breakdown by the 9 categories of Kentucky in the report card, in addition to the top state, or the one that was graded the highest in the report card being Washington State. Washington State checked every box except one. And also the lowest, the one that was graded the lowest in the report card being your next door neighbor, Ohio. Ohio only checked one box, okay? So that way you get to see, okay, thank goodness we're not Ohio, but how can we work more at being closer to Washington State, but doing it our way in Kentucky, right? And so we're gonna get to Q&A in a minute. And so I just wanna make sure you understand that the teaching will go over all that. You'll get a report card with all of that information in there, including 2 other states, one that's more empowering than Kentucky, one that's less empowering. We're gonna go through some analyses of compare and contrast, and that's gonna help you on developing your campaign for both legislative advocacy and the administrative advocacy with CLEC, because you can see what other states have been doing and be able to say, okay, we want to adopt that. We like that. We want to bring that here. We want to do it our way, custom tailored for us, right? So I do that, and you get the PowerPoint presentation, mini report card, all of that at the end of that. Now the workshop, so the teaching is more about what are we going to do? The workshop is focused on how do we accomplish it. So for the workshop, we do the same thing, explanation of the processes for decertification, the mini report card. Additionally, I created 9 different model solutions for different states based on their state law. It looks like a lot of states ended up copying and pasting the language of other state laws and then adopting it themselves, which, that happens. But because of that, there's similar processes and mechanisms with different states. And so Kentucky is in one group. And so I create a flowchart visualization so you could see what that looks like. And then we're gonna have what I call an interactive technology session, meaning that instead of using chalkboard and easel paper, we're gonna use our cell phones, we're gonna use our tablets and our laptops to be able to meet, if it be in person, virtual, or both, and start to have a discussion about what does this look like in Louisville, right? Because even though Lexington, Kentucky, and Louisville are under the same state law, The way this mechanism would look is going to be different because you have different cultures, different histories, and different population demographics. All of that has to align with the solution and the mechanism. So just understand there's no one-size-fits-all approach on this. It has to be custom tailored, even though you have the same state law. So that's what we're going to do in the workshop. We're going to use interactive technology to be able to custom tailor it. By the end of that one-day session, you will now have that local mechanism. You'll now know who needs to do what, when they need to do it, how they need to do it. Boom, it's done. And now that's what you're going to move forward on. And in my opinion, looking at all the changes you're going through here with the consent decree alternative, the federal funding cuts, this would be really helpful in establishing a solid foundation on how you're going to move the ball forward for the next at least 3 years, right, while federal government's not involved, okay? So those are two things I'm offering, and then last but not least, I had some videos, I'm not going to go through those here with you today, but I think the slides will be provided, so you can take a look at some of my work I've done around the country. But here's my contact information. If you'd like to stay in touch or you'd like to learn more about the report card or just sit down with me and talk about the consent decree or whatever, I do everything under the umbrella related to community police relations. You can reach me at www.mayors, M-A-Y-E-R-S, the word solutions.org. You can also scan the QR code there, that'll take you directly to my website. You can also reach me via email at the word empower, E-M-P-O-W-E-R, at mayorsolutions.org. I'm also on Instagram at mayors underscore LLC, and I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn at Mayors LLC. So thank you, and please do keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Carlton. I appreciate the information. And you mentioned Lexington. We actually do have someone, at least one person I know of, who made the trek here from Lexington. So appreciate you being here. We're going to hear next from Mr. Ed Harness, but I want to remind folks that Bianca is collecting your question cards. Carlton, you already got folks who have submitted some questions on cards. I'm sure that after Ed's presentation, we'll have even more questions from the audience. So let's get into it. I want to now shift us into another piece of the accountability conversation. So our next guest leads one of the most important oversight offices in the city, the Office of Inspector General. And this office exists because the community demanded independent eyes, independent judgment, and independent truth-telling. And he brings experience, clarity, and a deep commitment to strengthening trust between the residents and the systems that are sworn to serve us. So please join me in welcoming Inspector General Ed Harness.
Good evening, everybody. I probably won't need the microphone, but it has been a long week, so.
The only reason you need it is because it's streaming live.
Oh, yes, that's right, okay. So, I was just thinking, 4 years ago, about this time, I was probably going in front of the Government Oversight Committee, and it was a lot easier process 4 years ago. Sitting in Phoenix answering questions via Zoom, as opposed to what happened a few days ago. But anyway, thank you for your support. I would not have been reappointed without the efforts of the community. And so what I thought we would discuss tonight is get a better understanding of our role, the IG's role, and the independent monitor's role as we move forward under the community commitment. The lawyer who didn't want to call it a consent decree is no longer with the city. She's moved over to the United Way. And if you look at the cover of the community commitment, it says Louisville's consent decree. So, you know, we can call it what we want. But it's the document under which we're going to be operating for possibly the next 5 years. Although there's an out in 2.5 years, there even could be an out in a year if Metro Council decided that they wanted to defund the project. So we must be aware of all of those things, and that's why we as a community must stay engaged. We can't be apathetic as to what happens, and we have to, for lack of a better term, monitor what is taking place. So,
What in Chinese?
the community commitment, Louisville's consent decree. Both the Inspector General and the Independent Monitor are named in the community commitment. The OIG's office is first referenced in the table of contents, and then the paragraphs that define how we're going to move forward start at 605. And I actually had to reference paragraph 607 yesterday because the commander of the Internal Affairs Division wanted to deny us access to a file. And so I had to point to him that 607, the paragraph says that we're entitled to that document and you don't get to judge whether or not it fits one of our criteria. So we'll see where that goes next. So the Independent Monitor is effective law enforcement for all. I'm sure you're familiar with that organization based upon how they were chosen. I was surprised that they were the chosen entity, but apparently, from what I was told, the community input pushed it over, that they were favored by the community, and so therefore that was the decision that was made. So the Independent Monitor is going to make 4 compliance assessments, and that's going to be 4 general areas. It's going to be policy, training, data, and audit. And those compliance assessments are going to be for all of the areas of conduct that have to be examined by the monitor. Those areas of conduct, I'm sorry the print is so small, but it's essentially the 13 findings that were in the DOJ findings report. So it's management and supervision, community-based public safety, use of force, residential search warrant applications and executions, protests and demonstrations, fair and impartial enforcement, street enforcement, individuals with behavioral health disabilities, sex misconduct, sex assault and domestic violence, misconduct investigations and discipline, officer and employee assistance support, and recruitment and hiring. So for every one of those 13 areas, there are paragraphs that describe how the department is to change or comport itself with more constitutional policing. And that is going to happen in those 4 areas of review, as I outlined before: policy, training, data, and auditing. The compliance reporting is going to be a report that the monitor produces every 6 months. The monitor's report will be provided to LMPD. LMPD will have 14 days to issue a response to the report. If they differ with some of the results, they can state their opinion, and they can decide, state a position other than the monitor if something may be in compliance they agree with or don't agree with. 14 days after that, the monitor then has 14 days after LMPD's 14 days to fashion their responses to those inquiries or those disputes and publish a final report or produce a final report. That final report will be presented publicly to the Community Safety Commission. Not the Metro Council, the Community Safety Commission. The Community Safety Commission is the newly formed entity under Mayor Greenberg, which has 26 representatives. They've had 1 meeting so far. They're going to meet again in December
12th.
I'm sorry?
December 12th.
Thank you. December 12th at 1 o'clock, I believe. The location is to be determined. And the Community Safety Commission's focus is not solely police monitoring. It is more focused on public safety initiatives. So the members of the Public Safety Commission are determining what areas of public safety they want to examine, and oh, by the way, they will be accepting the monitor's report when it's produced in 6 months. So for the paragraphs that define the actions to be taken, the monitor is going to have 3 designations for those paragraphs and the evaluation of compliance. And those designations are going to be in compliance, in progress, and not started. Surprising that there's not a non-compliance finding. Also, within the community commitment, it does not provide a remedy for non-compliance. It does not say, if you're non-compliant in this paragraph in a year, this is what will happen, this is what the enforcement mechanism will be. There are no enforcement mechanisms within the community commitment. The monitor will not conduct individual misconduct investigations. They will refer any complaints received to either the PIU, the PSU, or the Office of Inspector General.
What's the PIU, PSU?
PIU is the Public Integrity Unit with LMPD. They are the unit that does the investigations if it is a criminal investigation. So, for instance, an officer-involved shooting is always investigated as a criminal event, a crime event. So PIU initiates the investigation. PSU, the Professional Standards Unit, is the unit that does the investigation as to whether or not the acts or the event, the officer's conduct violated policy. So that's the administrative investigation. In an officer-involved shooting, 45 days after the event, there's an automatic trigger to begin a PSU investigation. PIU and PSU investigations cannot be combined because in a PSU investigation, because it's administrative, officers must give statements. They are compelled to cooperate because it's a condition of their employment. That is a case called Gary. I think it's a teachers union case out of New Jersey from 1986, I think. So PIU and PSU are completely separate. There is a wall between those. The PIU will sometimes rely on the PSU interview, however, which I think is problematic, but that's how they operate at this point. And then the OIG, the Office of Inspector General. In my conversations with Chief Harrison, the head of ALIFA, Effective Law Enforcement for All, it's been his standard practice that when they begin their work, he enters into an MOU with the command staff and the monitoring team that if any complaints come in regarding the monitoring team or the command staff, that the local oversight entity is the entity to do the investigation into that complaint. We will see whether or not that MOU takes place here in Louisville, but that's been his standard practice in Baltimore, New Orleans, and in Minneapolis. So the Office of Inspector General, in the community commitment, we maintain all the powers that we have under the founding ordinance for Louisville Metro. None of that has changed. So that means that the Civilian Review and Accountability Board has the power to authorize the Office of Inspector General to conduct full investigations, to review final reports of any OIG investigations, also to review closed internal police investigations into police shootings and incidents that that have death associated with a police act. And also the ability to advise the mayor, Metro Council, Chief of Police on matters relating to the quality and adequacy of internal police investigations, recommend changes in policy, training, procedures, and staff as a result of our reviews or their reviews. While that work is being done, I can't say that it's been impactful as yet. We had a year-long study that we did related to police detectives at the division level. And the chief has said that he's considering some of the changes that we recommended, such as you cannot be a detective until you've been in the department for 5 years. They have to centralize the selection process instead of it being localized so that it gets away from being a good old boys network for selection to detective. And we also recommended that a detective become a promotion and that it be an organizational progress, much like a sergeant, so that there's an incentive for detectives to be detectives and stay in the detective bureau. Those are just some of the changes that we recommended from that study. The Office of Inspector General. How many of you knew that we only had 6 areas of investigation that we could conduct? Yes, only 6. And those are here. They're serious injury or death for someone who's in police custody, serious injury or death of an individual resulting from a police action or inaction, abuse of police authority, which has no definition. I tend to interpret that one rather broadly. Excessive use of force, discrimination in the provision of police services, and then sexual misconduct. So those are the 6 areas that the Civilian Review and Accountability Board can authorize the Inspector General to do a full investigation. So if it's rudeness or some other type of conduct that doesn't fit within these 6, then our office cannot do that full investigation. We have other remedies. We can send it over to PSU and have them do the investigation. And now under the community commitment, they would have to send that back to us for us to review to ensure that the investigation was done properly and fairly. But we would not be able to do that investigation. We also have the ability to do non-complaint reviews. So those would be more like a pattern in practice, like we did for the detectives. I think as I pointed out for the executive summary for that detective study, we really learned what we need to do for pattern and practice investigations based upon complaints. The pattern and practice for the detectives came about because of the Mary Spalding case. Mary Spalding was one of the very first people to come to complain at our office. She was a violent domestic violence victim where the department had not fully investigated her case. It had been years. She had no remedy. So when we became operational, she sought us out to do the work. We found problems with the investigation, pointed those out. But also we learned from the detectives when we were interviewing the people that were assigned to do that work, they had extraordinary caseloads. 1,700. One detective came into us and in her interview, she said her caseload was at 1,700. So how unmotivated would you be to come to work if you had a caseload of 1,700? The policy says that you're supposed to touch that case with your supervisor every 60 days. So that's impossible. So by policy, you know that they can't be doing the work the right way. So something would have to change. So that's why we decided to do that study and that review. Some of the additional powers that we gained under the community commitment that we did not have in the original ordinance. We now have the ability to do confidential investigations, meaning that if a complainant comes to us and they do not want the department to know about the complaint, we do not have to disclose who that complainant is. We do not have to disclose the complaint to the department. We can conduct the investigation without disclosing anything but the fact that we have a civilian complaint. And that's huge. That's huge. Because there's a lot of fear still in the community. We're just now coming as a community to realize that the Office of Inspector General is an outlet for the community, because for years and years and years, you had to go to PSU to file your complaint, and you can imagine the reception that you would get when you go to PSU. And on some level, it's like you have to go to your abuser for a remedy. And that's not good. So just this past week, in the news was the reports about Lieutenant Stewart's discipline being cut in half. Well, that is a complaint that originated at our office, because Lieutenant Stewart, while even being told about the incident, being shown the video, speaking with the head of security at the Marriott, who's a former law enforcement officer, decided that, in his words, it wasn't a reportable use of force. Now, if you've seen the video, the surveillance video from the Marriott, that man has no idea that this complaint was ever filed. He has no idea that action was taken on his behalf because of that force that was used on him. He is grabbed by the throat, forcefully placed up against a beverage cooler, off of his feet, taken to the ground. You can see his head strike the floor. He's there, he's handcuffed, he's searched, he's removed, he's taken in a squad car, and then eventually driven to a location and released. But for our office existing, that would have never been reported. The officer who used the force would have been terminated, but he decided to resign. He is a wandering officer. I thought the term was ghost officer.
Oh, there's multiple. Wandering is one of the more popular ones.
Okay, yeah, I know that term is ghost officers who go from department to department. So the officer who used force would have been terminated, but he retired prior. But that's an example of why our office exists in the first place, and the fact that anonymous complaints, because this was an anonymous complaint, that anonymous complaints can work. Also, we now have a one-year budget rainy day fund. So any funds that we do not spend from our fiscal year every year, they do not go back into the general fund. They are set aside for us, and we are going to be allowed to accumulate that to the level where it equals 1 year of our operational budget. So I met with the budget folks 2 weeks ago, and right now we have $70,000 in our rainy day fund. And that was taken directly from the paragraph of the consent decree. And I don't think that they kind of noticed that, and it kind of slid into the community commitment. And it's there, and they're living up to it. So, can't complain. Also, monthly updates on all formal and informal complaints received at the PSU unit, so that we know what's going on at PSU, what they're investigating related to civilian complaints. I have
submitted a memorandum of understanding that that monthly update should be for all internal affairs investigations, not just civilian complaints. And then the last one is a requirement to respond in a timely manner to a complaint or a non-complaint recommendation. In the ordinance, there was no requirement for the department to respond to our recommendations. And so the previous two, well, I don't think Erica Shields actually got any recommendations by the time she was replaced. So Chief Gwen Villarreal and Chief Humphrey, for a while, decided that they should live up to the ordinance and not respond to our recommendations. Then Chief Humphrey appeared in front of the Civilian Review and Accountability Board and promised to do so. And then after some possibly public shaming, he is now responding to our recommendations, aside from his public outbursts when he disagrees with our findings in the officer involved shootings. In the consent decree, it was 45 days. In the community commitment, they changed it to in a timely manner. So, of course, that will be up for interpretation. And that's it. So those are some of the differences between the Inspector General and the independent auditor.
Thank you.
Never in my career as a lawyer.
Please step to the side.
We have to be quiet.
So Bianca's collecting cards, so if you have questions, please put them on the cards, and we'll get started. So the first question, of course, is for Carlton. So, does post apply to police chiefs?
It's a good question. It does, in that police chiefs are required to be certified under state law, and so if the same kind of standards under state law that apply to certification and decertification, meaning in Kentucky, that if you commit certain felonies, then you can, or not commit, if you're convicted of committing certain felonies, then you can automatically be decertified and lose your license. The same, that also applies to police chiefs, the same way that discretionary would if they were engaged in not necessarily criminal conduct, but unethical conduct. They can also lose their license through discretionary decertification under Kentucky state law.
Thank you. Ed, this question is for you. Why is there no enforcement mechanism for non-compliance? Again, restate it for the folks.
Why is there no enforcement mechanism for non-compliance? That's a, well, I have been reappointed, but I haven't been re-sworn in yet, so. No, I believe that the elected officials are of the belief that they can oversee the department and make decisions if in fact there's a level of non-compliance that they find untenable. So they want to leave that to their judgment, apparently, without any real objective standard.
So we're going to leave it to our Metro Council members.
That is.
No, I'm just saying so that people know where to put their
Right.
energy.
Yeah, Metro Council or the mayor's office. I believe that I believe it comes to the mayor's office. I believe the Metro Council's ability to oversee the department is limited in its scope. And I think that ultimately all the power for the Community Safety Commission, the monitor, and the chief, it lays with the mayor.
Thank you. Please keep the mic. Why is there no definition of abuse of police authority?
Why is there no definition of abuse of police authority? There is an abuse of police authority definition in Louisville Metro Police Standard Operating Procedure, but that is for the officers, and I don't believe that it is nearly broad enough for an oversight entity to consider that to be the definition. And so I will maintain a very broad definition of abuse of authority, and I'll wait to be challenged on it if that day comes.
Okay, one more question for you while you have the mic. You said there's no definition for timely manner, so what can people do to change that?
Well, I think that if there is no definition of timely manner, there's a reasonableness standard that's accepted in law enforcement. I think that watch what happens when we make recommendations. I think the monitor will probably have an idea of what's reasonable, because those responses are required in the community commitment, and the monitor will be the one to evaluate whether or not the response is reasonable and whether or not it's timely. I think that they'll probably, while it won't be a written 45 days or whatever, the monitor will make a determination what is reasonable.
Thank you. I'll come back to you in just a moment. Carlton, a couple of questions for you. Again, please restate for folks watching. What role, if any, does the police union have in the decertification or lack of officers?
Well, they really don't play a role in decertification, because it's the sole responsibility, or in most cases, the sole responsibility for the post commission, which is CLEC in the case of Kentucky. Like I had mentioned earlier, police unions tend to get involved more so when there's like an officer's been fired, and then under police union contract, they're allowed to issue a grievance, which then would result in arbitration, and then the arbiter would decide if they get their job back or not. And a lot of times they do get their job back. That's just what studies have shown across the country. So, yeah, oh, nice music. But it definitely, unions have no role in it. And I would say the only thing that you might want to pay attention to, you want to make sure you know who are the members of CLEC. A lot of times the post commission around the country, this is just for every state that has a post commission, it tends to consist of former law enforcement, former judges and prosecutors. And so it's going to be that perspective that they're applying to each case. And so that's why it's important to have public members who don't have that background to also have voting power on the post commission. I think to have more than one, I know in Kentucky you have one, but it'll be good to expand it and have more than one public members on the CLEC.
Thank you. One more question, we'll turn it back over to Ed. Should our focus be on the police contract in this conversation?
On decertification?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
That's not the case.
So, I mean, I always think it's very important to focus on the collective bargaining agreement for the negotiation of the police union contracts, especially to make sure that members of the public have a seat at the table when they're negotiating like discipline, investigations of misconduct, etc. However, like the police union contract, that's a very specific process and has a very different pathway compared to decertification and CLEC and post commissions. They are, what I want to say, they're completely exclusive of each other. There really is no crossing over of either pathways.
Was that your question? Were you saying to me, AB, that was your question?
No, I don't think you can understand my handwriting. I know I write for a 5-year-old kid. I have a question about the decertification. Is it a point system? And if it's not, because I'm looking at it, probably not, what can we do to get a point system done to get them certified?
So when you say a point system, you mean like you get...
So if they did so many things wrong, would they get decertified automatically?
Oh, okay, so in other words, if they are found to have engaged in misconduct multiple times, so There is no point system for decertification. I mean, every state has their own individual law, and so every state's law is going to have its own individual nuance different from another state. But from my assessment, there is no point system. However, I did look over Kentucky's law before, this event today, because I just wanted to make sure I knew what it says. And I'm sorry, it just reminded me how good your law is. You really have a really good law in this state. So under your law, it does not only allow for discretionary decertification to occur if an officer were to have been found to, convicted of engaging in certain kinds of criminal conduct. It also says that in certain cases, if they're found to have engaged in conduct that by itself, criminal conduct, would not be enough to decertify an officer, but let's say they do two things, right, in one situation, where they've engaged in misconduct, criminal conduct, two different kinds of criminal conduct, let's say two different kinds of misdemeanors, right? They're not felonies. In that kind of situation, and I think your Kentucky law specifically lays out which kind of conduct that's not a felony, but is still considered, if you commit more than one of these, and we find that you have, then we can decertify you through discretionary decertification. I'll be honest, that's something I have not seen in pretty much any other law where they say, if you commit more than one of these offenses at one time, then we can also decertify you. But if you commit only one of them in one instance, then that does not rise to decertification. So I know it's not a point system, but that is something that is unique to Kentucky state law, and I think is wonderful because it's broadening the scope of what would make an officer eligible to lose their license if they engage in misconduct. It's not just saying only if you are found to have committed a felony, only if you're found to have committed these specific unethical behaviors or conduct. It's saying even broader than that. Even if you committed two different kind of misdemeanors that we have listed here, in one instance, then you can also be decertified, right? So it's just, most state laws don't have such a broad scope for having eligibility of officers to be decertified. So it's not a point system. I know I'm not directly answering your question, but I do want to let you know you do have this other thing, which is a big benefit as well.
Yeah, that explains it, Mike. That's perfect.
Thank you, Carlton. Appreciate
Don't
it.
like
Amy, I was just about to give you a compliment, and then here you go. No, my compliment was going to be, one of the reasons why people put questions on cards is because people take 20 minutes to get to the point. You got right to the point. Appreciate you for that, for modeling what we're looking for when we say, do you have questions? Thank you for that. This question is for you, Ed. Would it be beneficial for the community commitment to be codified in an ordinance?
Would it be beneficial for the community commitment to be codified into ordinance? Yes, certain aspects of the community commitment would, our ordinance, the Sustainability and Accountability Board ordinance, would benefit from certain paragraphs being codified, yes.
I have an idea. Some folks who probably asked that question. I can't do this one at all, y'all. Good gracious of life. How many, let's see, this is for you, Carlton. How many civilian initiated complaints has CLEC done? Do you have any idea?
I actually don't know. Based on my conversations with people here in Louisville in particular, it seems like there's not many coming out of this city. Because most people don't even know that they have the ability to do that. So, I think that there definitely needs to be an education campaign related to this topic so that more people, not only in Louisville, but in other parts of the state of Kentucky, know that this is something they can do and also know how they can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then while you have the mic, who does the investigations for CLEC?
Well, CLEC they have their own in-house investigators that they rely on to do the investigation. However, I did see from my research that there are times when CLEC will rely on the law enforcement agency that's employing the officer that's been accused of misconduct. They will rely on them and their investigation, their internal affairs investigation, or whatever comes out of that. Then the independent investigators at CLEC will then take that investigation and they can decide not to do their own investigation and just rely solely on the law enforcement agency's investigation. So they do have that discretion. It's not like they're mandated to just do their own investigation independent of the law enforcement agency. So there is room for them to do that, and I did see that they do tend to do that at times, just to rely on the police department rather than themselves.
Thank you. This question is for you, Ed. Would your office have been able to investigate Slushygate under the 6 charges that the Civilian Review and Accountability Board gave you?
Would our office have been able to investigate Slushygate?
And what is Slushygate?
Slushygate, how do you describe it? It was a series of events where officers were filming themselves driving around town on duty, throwing slushies and soft drinks on citizens as they pass by, picking out those that would appear to be more vulnerable than others. And they were filming it, sending it to each other. There was a sergeant involved, and so the sergeant, was he demoted? He was suspended. But the question is, could we have, I would have postured that we could do that under abuse of police authority, and then ask the board to authorize our investigation under that standard.
Okay, thank you. Carlton, question for you. 2 questions. What is the only box that Ohio checked? And what is the only box that Washington did not check? I'll have to repeat it for folks.
Oh, okay, well, luckily for me, I brought a hard copy of the report card. Because I don't have that like right on my head immediately to provide, but I do have it written out right here. Okay, so the question was, for Washington State, what was the one box that they was not checked, right? Okay, so Washington State checked every box out of the 9 categories except, do meetings occur often? Similar to Kentucky, Washington State only offers their post-commission, only offers their open meetings once every 3 months, which means you only have 4 bites at the apple to show up and say, this is what I think about stuff, right? So that's why they got an X on that, which is something that, I'll be honest, they could easily change that, just like CLEC could easily change it. You don't need a state law to change how often you're gonna have your meetings. You can just decide on that with a majority vote amongst CLEC members, and they can even amend their bylaws on their own. So they don't need state lawmakers involved in that at all. What they really need are for you, the taxpayers, to show up to the meetings and let them know this is what we want you to do and this is why. Put that pressure on them, and they'll probably do it because it's not a heavy lift and it's not going to cost them any money.
Okay, and then Ohio.
Ohio, all right. Okay, so Ohio, what box did they check, right? So for Ohio, the one box that Ohio checked was, are civilians involved in the decision-making process? Ohio has at least one civilian who's a public member, not law enforcement background, not an elected official, who is required to be on their post-commission. So, every now and then they have a civilian that steps down, then a new one comes in to take that position. But they do have that as a requirement. So that's why they got to check on that.
Okay, thank you. Now, the person said that either one of you could answer this one. The FOP, Fraternal Order of Police, filed an amicus brief in the DOJ consent decree process. Why not a complaint about the community commitment?
The simple reason is, why didn't the FOP file an amicus brief for the community commitment? Because it's not a legal action that would allow them to do so. This is a private agreement. And that is why Louisville is going to be the test city for these private agreements for consent decrees that do not have court enforcement. And the monitoring team is very aware of that. They're very aware that there's a profile to be built if they can accomplish what's in the community commitment on a private level without enforcement. So this could be a trend for private agreements in municipalities for police reform. And the monitoring teams are all about it. They want it, and I think that they believe that it could be profitable for them.
Thank you. This is, oh, no.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I know earlier we had talked during your podcast, Attica, about Cincinnati, Ohio, and how for over 20 years they've had the CCA, the Cincinnati Collaborative Agreement, which they had created while they were under federal oversight and consent decree, which only lasted 10 years, their consent decree. And what they did is they created an agreement where they brought together the police union, law enforcement, victims of police violence, their families, community advocacy groups, and they created an agreement that mirrors the provisions within their consent decree, but also adds nuance to it that makes it more custom tailored specifically to Cincinnati and other issues they're dealing with, right? Like gun violence, in crisis, etc. So that way it's something that's unique to them. Now, their CCA, their Cincinnati Collaborative Agreement, even though their consent decree only lasted 10 years before it was terminated, their collaborative agreement has been in place for over 20 years. Okay, so it's outlasted their consent decree, even though there is no federal oversight. There is no federal judge presiding over it. This is all the community coming together. And what they did, similar to what Ed had said in his previous response, so you talked about the community commitment, how could that be codified, right, into like an ordinance? So what they did with the CCA, they codified portions of it in different ways. There were some portions, like the Civilian Complaint Review Board, that were codified, I believe, via ordinance, then other portions that were codified via municipal charter amendment. There were other portions that were codified via an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding. And so, you know, the whole point was that we're gonna put it in writing so that we have something here, so when leadership transitions, you're not always gonna have the same police chief, you're not always gonna have the same mayor, et cetera, same city council members, you still have this in place so that you have something to hold whoever comes in new accountable to, right? It's not like they could just show up and say, now that they're gone, we're not gonna do it differently. Now I have a new vision. No, we still have to adhere to what we all agreed upon. And so, you know, there are models out there that even Louisville can look to, your next door neighbor, right, in Ohio, and see, okay, what did they do? How has it worked out? Trial and error. What can we learn from it that we can custom tailor here in Louisville, right? So I just wanted to put that out there that there are some models already that have been implemented that you can look to.
Thank you. While you have the mic, why is there only one citizen on the panel or board? I think people are referencing CLEC. And how many people, you mentioned this, but how many people are on the CLEC board in total?
The CLEC board in total, that's a good question. I have to look that up right now. I don't have that right in front of me. But I know that it's under the state law that they're required to have one individual. So if you want to expand that, once again, that would require state legislative advocacy to try to get an amendment to your state law that would then allow for more public members who don't have a law enforcement background and are not elected officials to then be and have voting power on CLEC. But it's the state law that mandates that. And I'm sorry, I don't have the number of total CLEC members. I don't want to even throw out a number because I just don't. I don't know right off the top of my head.
Thank you. Ed, this question is for you. And we'll go for about 5 more minutes because I know Lamont's sitting over there like, I'm not going to be here all night, y'all. So, do you believe that not having a standard for non-compliance enforcement leaves the door open for a group to choose not to comply and get away with it?
Do I believe that having a non-compliant standard allows for the police department to get away with non-compliance? I think that there's that possibility. I do believe, though, that there's going to be adequate judgment of the adequate evaluation, adequate assessment. So even though there's not a non-compliance in there, it will be detailed by it being in progress and not in compliance. So if it's in progress, that means that it's not in compliance. Now, I prefer having a more definitive categorization. That's what I was used to. But this is how they've chosen to do it. And also the evaluation plan from the department and the monitor should be out in probably the next 20 days. So that should be the next step where they're going to produce exactly what the protocols are going to be for the evaluation.
Thank you. And I would just say, y'all, you each have a Metro Council member that you can apply some pressure to and say, this isn't good enough, we need more, so just something to think about. This question, I think, is for you, Ed. How does this new review and advising affect the school district police, JCPS resource officers, as well as university police, if at all?
It has no jurisdiction over either of those entities. This is only for the Louisville Metro Police Department. It does not include JCPS or Metro detention either. It's only LMPD.
Okay. This last question is for either one of you or both. And whoever, we got another one? Can we go to him first? Okay, and whoever wrote this question, I'm gonna go ahead and ask this question. I know you're gonna have a lot to say, so I'm gonna go ahead and ask this question. Whoever wrote this, please correct me if I'm not reading it correctly, because I think you're asking two different things here. Is there a way to make the proactive solutions for community safety to come from the existing police budget? Wouldn't it be better to make the funding for certain proactive solutions, like after-school opportunities in low-income communities, come from, it says outside the police, but do you mean come from the police? Who wrote this? Whoever wrote it, they don't remember. So, should the money come from the police to do some of the proactive measures?
Oh, that was me. Yeah. Sorry. I was distracted.
Well, is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I guess it's a combination question. If you're talking proactive solutions, how much does that need to come from quote unquote police, and shouldn't it really, the funding be coming from other directions if we're talking about like after school programs for kids, that sort of thing?
So the money should not come from police?
Well, that's my question.
Okay.
I think the vision of Mayor Greenberg with his formulation of the public safety division is that it be more encompassing and not be seen as taking something away from the police in order to have alternate responses for mental health or after-school programs or other things. I think that's part of the Community Safety Commission's role, is to help define public safety beyond the police budget.
Thank you both so much. We appreciate you.
Just one last thing before I just want to say, because
well, then you're probably gonna have to respond to this too.
Oh, that's fine. Just there was something said earlier about if police chiefs can be decertified, and I said they cannot. I mean, they can. What I also want to emphasize with you is that sheriffs right now are not required to be certified. Even though police chiefs are in the state of Kentucky, sheriffs are not. So I just want to make sure, because I know some people, they think a police chief and a sheriff are equivalent to the same thing, and they're not. Sheriffs are elected officials, police chiefs are appointed. All right, so.
Our sheriff is certified.
Well, they don't need to be, there's no requirement.
No, because we just had one appointed, so this year, but he's a former law enforcement officer.
Right, so I just wanted to make sure you know that as well, because I don't want you to think just because a police chief is required to be certified that also means a sheriff is in Kentucky. They are not. Certain laws, certain states like Illinois, where I live, they did pass a law in 2021 that said that sheriffs also have to get certified. Before 2021, sheriffs were not required to be certified even in Illinois. So just want to make sure that you know that as well.
That's important to keep in mind as Sheriff James is trying to make the Sheriff's Department take on some LMPD duties. Yeah. The mic won't come that far. I'm gonna bring it to you so the folks online can hear what you have to say, but go ahead.
Okay, Hankerson, he's in jail, and he only got a light sentence. and he might appeal, but we need to appeal that he stay in there. Okay, the next thing is Grandmaster J. Hankerson shot. Grandmaster J did not shoot at anything, and he was very influential in Breonna Taylor's murder. And he's in jail, and he's had operations in terms of his heart. What can be done to get him out? And the last thing I want to say is this: the next time y'all come here, I want you to deal with reparations. And I mean that. I seriously mean that. And the drug thing, you can have a dog come out and go down the street and tell you where stuff is. Hey, so y'all comment on whatever you want to comment.
Y'all want to comment?
I can say something. So what I'll say is this about the reparations piece. I also agree that reparations is well past due and needed for African Americans in this country. Obviously, the country would not be what it is today without free labor for over 200, 400 years or so. So that's just a fact. The problem is this. Let's just be realistic. We are currently in a government where the federal government has already said anything that advances DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is not allowed and will not receive any funding and actually might get sued by the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ, the same division that resulted in the consent decrees. So there's already, I don't know if you saw in the news about a month ago, I believe it was Asheville, North Carolina. Their local reparations commission, they're right about to publish their report. And before they even publish the report, just talking about the report, the director of the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ, that's where Kristen Clark, she was the head of that. Now her successor, she sent a warning to Asheville, North Carolina, saying that if you publish that report claiming that you want reparations, that we're going to sue you for violation of civil rights, of constitutional rights, because it's race-based. And it's illegal to do things that are race-based under the Constitution. So I just want to say, I agree with you, but I also want to be realistic with where we are right now, what we're dealing with, and understanding that needs to happen. I think it will happen at some point, but I don't know if it's going to happen in the next 3 years. I think right now we have other issues we need to really buckle down and address, like SNAP benefits, Medicaid. What are we going to do about no money for gun violence intervention, at-risk youth in crisis? These are the things that apply to everybody and that will impact reparations down the line if we have to put all this money into dealing with this stuff now and then not have enough later on to address reparations. So I just want to, just kind of keep that in mind, but also let's try to be strategic in regards to how that's going to play out under this current federal administration.
Grandmaster J.
That one, I can't give you any information on that. I apologize.
I don't have any influence over the court system in any way. I would say that my understanding is the Department of Justice has filed a motion to dismiss or release Atkinson. So whatever public pressure can be brought to bear there. In my official capacity, I'm very much a stay-in-my-lane person, even though I'm accused of going way beyond the scope of what our duties are. And so I will do as much as I can within my position, but I don't have any ability to affect those things.
Thank you.
Y'all, can y'all give it up for Carlton Mayor, Esquire, and Inspector General Brad Green? Thank you all so much. Listen, if you believe that Louisville deserves real change, say, we're watching. We're watching. Yes, we are. We will keep watching and taking action. Thank you all for being here, for showing up with courage, and for choosing community over complacency. When families unite, change becomes unstoppable. So I want to turn it back over to the unstoppable Bianca Austin. Woo!
Well, I want to first off say thank you to Brother Lamont for always allowing me to come into our house. This is a safe space that he has allowed for us to have many conversations and do things that, so we appreciate you, Brother Lamont. And always, Carlton, thank you. I'm glad we finally got the opportunity. And this is only the beginning, you all. I really want us to put forth the effort to make sure that not only the community is successful, but Ed is successful.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Because like we can't let him down. Like we wanted him here. We need to continue to do the work to keep him here.
That's right.
And show the Metro Council, the mayor, and the police chief that, we can bridge the gap. We can come together. We can make policy changes for a better Louisville. So thank you all tonight for coming. Once again, if you have any questions, concerns, please reach out to me, familiesunitedapb.com. Now I know, I don't be emailing y'all back. I know I could get better at it, but it's just, I'm one man band, one man, one sound. So just give me a little grace, but I do have the community to support. I hope that everybody take away some homework tonight. Yeah. I don't want anybody to leave here thinking like, oh, this was nothing. We need to really go home and see the resources and the information that they provided. They just gave us the blueprint tonight, y'all. Yeah. So the next meeting, Ed, in your office is December?
Our next meeting is going to be December 16th.
December 16th, and they have it via Zoom as well.
It'll be via Zoom.
Via Zoom. So that's important. Even though we can't be there, we need to have at least a representative there. So when they are a part of the planning, we are a part of the process. Like Carlton said, we're not there, they're going to do whatever we want to do. So we need to come together, figure this out, and for 2026. Carlton, we're going to get together, raise funds, so we can have that workshop. Yeah. We will have that workshop. You know what I mean? And we need that workshop. So we can actually get out and take the information that we've been collecting, our resources, and actually put together a plan that we can present to Ed and say, hey, here's what we came up with. Now, how can we put this into play? So once again, thank you all for coming out. I appreciate all of you coming out in the rain on Friday night. Please continue to follow the work if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you, Queen Attica, as well, for moderating for me. So, and let's keep our eyes on a better Louisville. It's a lot as we go into the holidays. It's depression season. It's dark when we wake up. It's dark when we leave. Give each other grace. You want to say something?
Real quick.
Yep.
Before you leave, I like hearing this, right?
Okay.
If you ever been to Route 101, I say our house. I say Route 101 and you say our house. Remember that?
Yeah.
So let's do a chant. I say Route 101, you say our house, right? Route 101, our house. Route 101, our house. Route 101, our house. Welcome to our house, telling our story of the resilience and the courage of Black people.
Yeah, so you all made it home safe tonight, and I really appreciate you all coming out and is in community until the next time. Thank you.
Why is everybody why
Hey
is
y'all,
the
I'm
police
Attica
fighting
Scott,
against
former
us?
Kentucky State Representative, and you're joining me today on State Launch Night.
We will continue to provide updates as we have to our commissions.